Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. This is Pete Thorn. I know that many of you know who Pete is from YouTube and have heard him and his guitar work out on the internet and the outernet for years and years. We are at GuitCon 2018 here in Germany. I've never met Pete. I've wanted to meet Pete for a long time, and it's great to meet you, Pete.
Good to meet you as well, man. I'm a big fan, and I love what you do. You do good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kevin Sir from Sir Guitars. I play Sir Guitars. Kevin is John Sir's son. Mm-hmm. And when he found out that you were here, he was so excited. He's a huge fan of yours. And he said, "Oh my God, you have to make a video with Rick." So here we are, Kevin.
Awesome, awesome. I love Sir Guitars. Actually, I just played his guitar for about 20 seconds, and that's a killer guitar. That's your custom guitar, right?
Yeah, signature guitar. Yeah, we came out with it about, 2-3 years ago, something like that, and I love it. It's just been a great sort of tool for me, creative tool to get the job done.
So tell me about, as far as you have your Sir guitar and you have a Sir amplifier, right?
That's right, yeah. I have a signature Sir amp called the PT100. Of course, it's a big 100-watt amp.
It's actually heavy. Sitting right behind us here.
On screen. We came out with a plug-in version. And this is kind of funny because we came in here today and I said, "Hey, can I use the plug-in in this video?" And they said, "We don't have any means to monitor it really." And I said, "Well, what about if I just ran the output of my interface into the effects return of this amp here, and we make that happen and see what it sounds like?" And it sounds pretty, I've never tried it. It sounds great. Pretty chunky. I mean, I'm playing practice amp volume right now, and it's pretty good.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute, because I talk a lot about digital versus analog, and I'm a proponent of both.
Yeah.
But this is a different kind of digital that people have been talking about lately, because plug-in amplifiers like this have been around for years before the modelers. I guess we had the pods that were out back in the early 2000s.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you have things with the Axe-FX and the Kempers.
Yeah.
But now UAD has a whole line of mic. I guess you'd call them. Are they models? What are they, Pete?
Yeah, it's essentially. I mean, we sent an amplifier to Brainworks here in Germany. Actually, mm-hmm. They're the company that did it, and a cabinet, and then they physically go through and look at all the components and schematics and stuff, and they take the amplifier and model it into the digital realm. And you end up with a plugin that works. Now, it's a UAD exclusive plugin because that's how their stuff works. I've got an Apollo Twin interface here, and so you have to use the Apollo Twin with this plugin. But Brainworks does such a good job on it, and I'm a huge UA fan and used their stuff for a long time, so it seemed to be a good fit for me. But yeah, it's essentially an amp model in a plugin. And I'm sort of, I'm a big tube amp guy, and I love my tube amps and stuff, but there's times when it just makes sense to use something like this, like here. Right? Exactly what we needed to do today. I can't haul that 100-watt head over here on the plane or whatever. So you bring this, and I've got, a pretty great interpretation of my amp, right here in the laptop. I don't know. It's cool. It's amazing.
And how long does it typically take when they were modeling this? How long did it take for them to do that? How many versions did they go through? Did you try it out and say it's not quite there?
Yes. Although it sounded really good, but they sent me kind of a beta version. We were like, a little like this, a little like, and I talked to John about it because he heard it as well, John Sir, and he said, "Yeah, I found it was a little like in the low end." And I said, "Exactly, that's what I was hearing." And we gave them that feedback, and then they came back to us and said, "How about this now?" And we were like, "That's pretty ruling now. It sounds a lot like the amp." So it didn't actually take that long. I would say probably 6 or 8 months or something from the time that we sent them the amp till it was a completed real thing.
Okay, when you're going to A/B the two things, so do you actually have your amp sitting there and you have the plug-in out playing through speakers, or how do you do it?
The first time that so the first time I had it at home, I had the amplifier sitting there, and I was playing it through. I play a lot through load boxes and speaker simulation.
We were talking about this yesterday. We were talking about load boxes, and because I don't have one. I'm thinking about getting one, and I was asking Pete his advice on this, and you said,
well, not all load boxes are created the same. There's a lot of good ones out there now. I'm a big fan of the Sir. I use the UA Aux as well, actually. They make a terrific one. The Sir and the Aux, to me, are my favorites. Those are the ones that I'm using most of the time these days. I'm a fan of a lot of them. Like Two Notes makes great stuff, too. But the Sir one is really, they nailed the impedance curve of a 412 with greenback
Okay,
speakers.
okay, explain this.
So without getting too far out in the weeds.
We like that,
curve.
actually.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, weeds,
Well,
please.
basically, it's like this, and I learned this myself a few years ago. This was new to me. But if you take a guitar speaker and you plug it into the output of a tube amplifier, that output transformer of the tube amp into that speaker, they got this back and forth relationship going on where the output, it's pushing into the speaker's sort of pushing back on the amp, and this thing happens called an impedance curve. And that impedance curve, it really affects the tone of, you could say it's affecting the tone of the amp and the way that the amp's responding to the speaker. So if you were to take that speaker, let's say a speaker outside of a cabinet, right? You can plug it in and plug it into the amp. It would still work. It wouldn't sound very good. But as soon as you take that speaker and you put it in a cabinet, now it starts to sound like, oh, that sounds better, like in a physical enclosure. Yeah. The impedance curve actually changes because of the physical dimensions of that cabinet. So that has an effect on the impedance curve. Put it in a closed back cabinet, put it in an open back, it changes the impedance curve. So when you go to model an impedance curve, you got to kind of pick one. So the Sur guys picked the 412 with greenbacks. It seemed like a good kind of, everybody knows that tone. It's a good solid tone, definitely. So basically, long story short is when you think about a speaker cabinet, there's two things affecting the sound. It's the tone of the cabinet and the speakers. Okay, kind of the characteristic roll off of a 12-inch guitar speaker and what it does to the sound, and the speaker cabinet itself. There's that, and then there's also the impedance curve. Those things are all affecting the tone that you get. So that's a big consideration with load boxes. And I always say if you get a purely resistive load that doesn't have the impedance, the reactive component is all about that impedance curve and the load box replicating that. And if it doesn't do that, purely resistive load, if we think about the old, you were mentioning you have a Rockman, Tom Schultz.
Tom Schultz, Power Soak, yeah,
right.
Old school.
One of the first ones. There was the Altair, I believe.
Altair, yeah.
In the 70s. And then later on came some other units in the 80s and stuff like that that would load down an amp. Basically, if there's no impedance curve going on, what I have found, you can get a good sound with those things, but you generally have to do some EQ and stuff, because what they'll kind of do to the sound, if this is the sound of your amp and it's nice and open through a cabinet, put one of those on the sound, and it kind of does this.
Yeah, makes it kind of mushy.
Yeah,
and
closes it down.
Yeah, which is why in some of these boxes they put, high boost buttons and everything to try and compensate for that. But that's really not a good fix.
Yeah, it's an imperfect way to go about it. If you can nail that impedance curve, then you can really replicate the physical. And once again, without getting in the weeds, you got to consider there's the sound of the cabinet and the speakers and the roll-off, and then there's also the impedance curve. So even if you got a good load box that's reactive, now you're still going to need to replicate the characteristic high-end roll-off and certain tone of the speaker in a cabinet. And that's where IRs and analog speaker simulator boxes come in and stuff.
Where we were in 2001 when the pod came out to where we are now with simulations, what do you think? Is it there?
Well, I mean, this feels like when I plugged this in, your first thing was, that sounds pretty damn good, right?
Yeah. Come on, be honest, can they? Is it more the player can tell the difference?
You get me into a. The thing about it is this: is that I think that this comes incredibly close to the real amplifier.
I'm a real amplifier guy. Anybody that watches my channel knows that. But when you put the stuff in a mix, I've done things where I've used a model version of an AC30 along with my AC30, and you hard pan it, and just as an experiment, and in the mix. People can't tell the difference, really.
And that can be actually kind of a cool thing to do, like combine a modeler with a tube amp, because at the end of the day, these things are just tools. So it's like whatever gets you to the sound. I mean,
but where does it make a difference, though, as the player? Don't you agree?
Where one of the biggest differences is the ease, even this, right? Like I'm reaching over here. I love this thing. It's great, but I can't quite physically.
No, you were saying, where's the feed? Do you see where the feedback button is?
Yeah, on the right. Or so I need to get into. So with an amp, you got a knob. And
that's it.
It's this thing that's a physical thing with knob. It's the same thing about a mixing console or mixing within the box. Which do you like better? And it's why they make physical control surfaces now for DAWs.
Yeah.
So that you can.
People have hands.
Exactly. So there's that. Now, when it comes down to the tones, it's like it's getting to the point where the modeling world is getting really good. So what we're trying to do, without giving too much away, is I work closely with Sur on amps and stuff like that. The next stuff we come out with, amplifier-wise, is going to be trying to bridge the worlds, where it's like we're giving you the tube amp but with a lot of the features and modern
flexibility
stuff.
of the digital.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make it so that it's not such a like either or. It's more like, let's combine the best of some of these worlds together and give you a really usable thing that is a great tool for a musician to use, whether they're practicing, whether they're playing on stage, whether they're recording at home, recording in a big studio. I want to bridge all that.
Okay, so Pete is a great guitar player, has toured with everybody, and has a really killer YouTube channel. Pete, if I were to say, what are the top 10 greatest rock riffs of all time? Give me. What comes to mind? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Rock riffs of all time.
Yeah. How good is Angus? I mean, Angus is so good.
He's amazing.
Why do people even get that? How good Angus is nowadays?
I don't think so, because who can actually perform like that while they're playing like that?
Oh,
I mean, it's magic.
Nobody who could back even then. I mean,
yeah,
he's
he's incredible.
But his feel and his note choice just so right.
I'll tell you, a friend of mine worked on the Ball Breaker album when they came back with Phil playing drums and stuff. Around 97 or 98, I think that album came out, and he had a tape, a DAT tape he's got of those sessions of them rehearsing stuff for the sessions. And so it's mixed, kind of drums don't sound that great. It's just a rehearsal of DAT, but the guitars are mic'd well and they're hard panned, and you can hear Malcolm and Angus kind of working through ideas. Every now and then you hear Brian singing a little bit, but for the most part it's just, and that tape, you can put it on and it's a party stopper. You just put it on if people that like rock music and they're like, oh my God. And just the groove and the feel of hearing those two, it was really both of them, I think. Angus, amazing.
Oh yeah, Malcolm's rhythm playing, unbelievable.
They were such a team.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
And what were your big influences growing up?
I started out mostly on like when we sat down. The first song I ever learned on guitar. And so it was the Who, and it was let me think. Beatles was huge for me. I got into collecting Beatles records when I was in the 6th grade. My phone's going off for some reason. Fairfield, New Jersey. Why are you calling me at 2 in the morning, New Jersey time? Beat it. So for me, Beatles was really the thing. I started collecting records in the 5th grade or 6th grade. By the time I was in like the end of the 6th grade, I think I had 55 Beatles albums. I spent every bit of my allowance on records, and like, if you get me anything for Christmas, just get me, I want this picture disc or whatever it was. So I had a whole Beatles collection by the time it was like.
Okay, so what is the greatest guitar solo of a Beatles song? What do you think?
Probably.
Of course.
Yeah. I don't really have a very good tone for that one. I love that. Or what about which was Paul, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think
Paul
it was.
actually played that. So I mean, that's amazing to me that that sometimes you didn't know if it was like maybe Paul played drums on something. Or
what amazed me is how good George got by the end. How at the beginning, you hear some of these outtakes where Lennon, what was that? George takes a solo and Lennon's like, what was that?
Yeah.
But by the end of the Beatles, George was so good.
Yeah, but even his early ideas. Perfect. They weren't worried about technique or it was all. It's a little more like I feel like Nirvana kind of revisited that later on, and the genius of Nirvana. Like we went through the '80s and all this technical, and then the wonderful thing about
people on my channel know I revere Kurt Cobain. I love his guitar playing.
Me too.
And I love Nirvana. They're one of my favorite bands ever. And people are always saying, how do you like Nirvana? It's like, well, first of all, Kurt Cobain's songwriting was so sophisticated.
Yeah.
The chord progressions and melodies, everything about it. And his soloing style, people think, oh, Nirvana, there were no guitar solos. There were guitar solos in every Nirvana song. He actually had that aesthetic for guitar solos.
He did.
It was a very different aesthetic. He played the melody. He went back to old school.
Like the Beatles. Doing just a simple melody that hooks you and grabs you, and it was a part of the song. I completely agree with you 100%. They needed to happen. Like that needed, it was the ultimate antidote to whatever kind of overplaying or sort of vapid, bullshit or whatever was going on in the 80s. Not to say that I love 80s, there's a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
And everything from the AC/DC that came out, I love Van Halen, I love the Pretenders, I like The Cure, I like all kinds of stuff that happened from the 80s. A lot of hard rock was cool in the 80s, but there was also just this ton of wave of kind of not so great stuff coming out, and Nirvana just put the smack down on all of it. I completely agree, as well as Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. It was great because it really brought songwriting back to the focus, and not it kind of kicked out the bullshit lyrics and stuff like that too. I feel like lyrics were, people started writing about things that were a little bit more important and real again. So
okay, so I watched your videos about where you demo stuff and everything, but then when Chris Cornell passed away, your video on his passing, I know you played with Chris.
Yeah.
That was incredibly moving. That was a really great video on it. And can you talk about playing with Chris and what that was like?
Yeah. First of all, the video was it was a weird. I think about why I made that video sometimes, because it was right after he passed that I made it, and I didn't know. I think, what were you doing? Why did you do that? And it's like what I started to. The only thing I was sort of in shock, and the only thing I knew was that I wanted to talk about it that morning, but I didn't really want to see anybody.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I feel comfortable these days communicating feelings and talking about things is through this weird thing that we do now that we're all here doing this week in Germany. And so that was the only thing it was like, I guess this is some way that I feel comfortable talking now. And it kind of get, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Turn the camera on and just talk. And that's what I wanted to do that morning. I don't know why, it's a weird thing, but I'm glad that I almost took it off. I was like, why did you do that? One part of me was
great.
Like, get rid of it. But another part of me was like, no, it's your honest feelings, and you were sort of in shock, and you just wanted to talk and tell stories, and so anyway, that was my reasoning with the video. But so playing with Chris was the best playing experiences of my life, because playing that music, getting the audition, first of all, I probably, if anybody out there's heard this story, I'm sorry, you can skip over this part of the video, but basically I got a call, an email. It was 12:30, and I was in the studio, 12:30, just past midnight, and I was in the studio actually working with Courtney Love, and we were recording, and I got an email that said, if you want to audition for Chris Cornell, you need to be at such and such a place tomorrow at noon and know these 5 songs. And there was a download.
Do you remember what they were? Yeah,
it was 2 songs off of the Carry On solo album, Arms Around Your Love, and No Such Thing were the 2 songs. And then it was Spoonman, Like a Stone, by Audios. So just getting that in your email and going it was this rush of oh my god, I gotta go Spoonman. I was flooding my head, how am I gonna go home and learn these things, and I need to be there by noon, but seeing the songs going, I get to go jam these with that guy tomorrow? You gotta be kidding me. So I got out of there about 1 a.m., about a half an hour later, and I drove home, and
you turn on the songs, right? Listen to them.
Songs, and I set up my rig, so that I could play it quietly. But I had my pedal board there because I need, like a stone, I need the whammy, solo, and I need the right sounds, because I'm always very into tones, and getting the right tones for the part and stuff like that. So I learned 2 or 3 that night, and so probably by about 3 a.m. or something, and worked for 2 hours, and I was like, okay, just get some sleep till 6 or 7, and then get up and keep working. So I slept 3 hours, set my alarm, got up, kept working, going over what I could. I think there was one song, one of the new ones off the solo album that I kind of got halfway through, and I was like, I gotta pack up and go. It's time to go to the audition. So I got about 4.5 of the songs down, pretty, to my satisfaction.
And that's when you wanted to start with, though, right?
Nah, I don't remember. It was okay. Whatever happened, it didn't. That one.
Whatever happened, you got the gig.
Well, so I went down and I pulled up, And honestly, I saw a lot of great guitar players there. A
Yeah.
lot of like the usual faces that I was like, oh, man. Guys, you're gonna, as soon as you pull your car up, you're like, man, why don't I just turn around? But I got out of the car and loaded my stuff in and set it up, and we jammed. And I guess he liked it because I got a call back, come back the next day.
Uh-huh.
So the next day was a
Wait, you got in there?
Yeah.
Chris is there. Is he playing guitar or just singing?
just singing.
Just singing, but looking over and checking you out, right?
Yeah, and it was like
Okay, tell me what
Chris Cornell.
Right.
It was rad. I mean, it was like, I don't know how else to say it.
So when you do, for example, Spoon Man, it gets to Kim Thale's solo that's totally weird with the wah and everything. What do you do during that?
I think I just,
Did you just make up your own? Did you play your own thing?
So that's a great question because you have to kind of
Like, what do you do when you're going to do something like that? It's
like a stone. It's obviously it's a little bit what we're talking about. It's a melody.
melody, yes.
So it's a melodic break as
Yeah.
much as a solo. So
Yeah.
you play the solo.
Yeah.
It
But
would
when
be
it's
weird.
something that's that you can actually jam on, Spoon Man, then you just
Yeah.
kind of ripped your own solo, basically.
My
Start with the
inclination-
same idea and then kind of go off, right?
Exactly. My inclination is to pick the key moments where if there's a bend and it's really
Yeah.
key, or a moment that is kind of like an emotion, play that, and then sort of, basically sort of trying to ape the style a little bit, but also
Kim
inject
Thale's
some of
almost
yourself.
impossible. His style is so unusually weird.
Very
I love his,
avant-garde, yeah.
very avant-garde.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So that's what I did.
Okay, so Chris is singing. Are you thinking to yourself, whoa, that's Chris Cornell singing?
Yeah. I thought that for the whole next 3 years.
Right.
You never want to like have that lost on you. That it's like, oh my God, look at that guy over there.
And when you guys would play live, how would he always on certain songs he'd play guitar and certain songs he would just sing, right?
With us, he didn't really want to play electric guitar.
Uh-huh.
He played acoustic on
Yeah.
some stuff, but I don't think once did he ever pick up an electric guitar in the 3 years or 4 years that I played with him. He would do an acoustic set in the middle of the show that was 3 or 4 songs usually, and then put the guitar down, and then we'd come back out and play. So he didn't really play much guitar during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because then later on, of course, he got back with Soundgarden, and then he had to pick up the guitar again.
Yeah.
And, started, and also doing his songbook tours that he did. Kind of the solo tours and for touring for the Higher Truth album and stuff. So sort of that period from 2010 until he passed away, he played a lot of guitar.
Yeah.
And he got really, really good at like doing the solo. He played Royal Albert Hall by himself.
Yeah.
He would tour with a cellist as well.
Yeah, Brian Gibson was a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah, because you're Atlanta. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Brian's great.
So he would tour with him, but he mainly, it was up to him up there with the guitar running
Yeah.
the show, and he got, I think, to be, he was always a good guitar player, but he really worked hard on it.
Did you ever talk to him about what his writing process was? I mean, he had some songs. You probably played Sun Shower, things like that, right?
Yeah.
That are really intricate songs.
Yeah, that's right.
How does he? What was his process? Did you talk to him as a guitarist about how he would come up with his songwriting, or not really?
Not that much. I just kind of marveled at how the brilliance. I was
Huge
playing,
Beatles fan.
Huge Beatles fan. Really big just music fan. Everything from, we talked about John Fogerty, we talked about Elvis Costello, we talked about punk rock, we talked about across the board. He was a fan, Zeppelin obviously.
Yeah.
But Sabbath, but then Elvis Costello, and like blending those things, you would hear those things in Soundgarden. That's what blew me away about them.
Yeah.
Really all those influences, this mishmash. But a song like, if you take 4th of July off, it's so great. And that sludgy, incredibly low-tuned riff comes in, and then the bass is so, talk about avant-garde, the bass is crazy.
Yeah.
If you never listen to 4th of July, go listen to it, and listen when the bass comes in the intro, and it's just like, imagine yourself hearing that for the first time and there being no vocal melody. What do I do with this? And then listen when Chris's voice comes in, and it's beautiful. He takes all that sludgy, weird, insane kind of low thing and sings this beautiful melody and ties it all together. And that was the incredible. Or a song like Zero Chance, off of Down on the Upside.
Yeah.
That always blew me away. You listen to that and listen to how his vocal melody, it goes odd meter for a minute, it's all over the place, kind of like, and he ties it all together with this incredible melody that's absolutely gorgeous. And that, I don't even know really what to ask him. Like, just how do you do that? Be like, he would have just said, I don't know, I'm just going to pick up the guitar.
I always thought that he would spend a lot of time on the music part of the riffs. I mean, he had so many alternate tunings that he would use.
Yeah. He did.
You know, I think about Pretty Noose, for example, and they have really, really interesting guitar parts.
Burn in My Hand as well.
Burn in My Hand.
Same tuning.
Yeah.
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 You literally have to take the strings off, so I would have to replace the G string with another B, and they would both be tuned, you know, to the same note.
Yeah.
In order to, or Sun Shower.
Sun Shower.
And yeah, Sun Shower was, let me see, it's all roots and fifths, I believe.
He did a lot of those.
FCC,
a lot of those roots and fifths. The Day I Tried to Live. A lot of the.
That's right.
Would have. He had a lot of those tunings with roots and fifths. Seasons. Yeah. He had a lot of. He has a weird tuning with that.
You really know a lot about this, I have to say.
I'm a massive Chris Cornell and Soundgarden fan.
It's awesome. Yeah, you've got it really down as far as those tunings. Yeah, I mean, you know, literally.
But I mean, that's like to think of that stuff, and then so when you're playing these tunes live with them, and you have all these weird tunings, would you do stuff in standard tuning?
No.
And you because a lot of those things require you have to be in the tunings to actually play the parts to make them sound like they do.
Yeah, Yogi would kind of do that a little more than me, the other guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
He would just be like, "Oh, I'm going to figure it out in standard." I'd be like, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to do the thing, just to make sure that." And then you get a kind of nice blended sound with two guitars. You know, that works. I think that for me, and Chris liked it that I did that. I think that I changed the strings on the guitar because he told me once. He's like, you know, you really attention to detail about that stuff, you know.
I mean, it must be what he did too. I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
For to get the stuff so it sounded.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's nothing, you know, when you're playing My Wave, right? So it doesn't sound the same if I just play it like that. It's all the strings.
That's right.
Across the 5th fret.
That's right.
Tuned to a giant power chord. So that's how it sounds, right?
Yeah.
If you just go, there's no way to do this.
No.
So, like these 3 notes, you can't go.
No.
You know.
That sounds like the Kinks.
Exactly. But yeah, to get it right, you got to have the tuning all roots and fifths all the way across, and do it with one finger, and that's Day I Try to Live is the same thing, you know. It's basically.
Can't really mimic it.
That doesn't sound right.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
with all the strings, and then you drag that finger when it gets heavy, and it just sounds. It's bonehead simple, but it's not.
No, but his thought process, I think, was he had a great attention to detail for even those things.
Yeah.
For coming up with those ideas, the riffs like that, and how they would translate on the guitar. And I think that those ideas, to me, in my brain, inspired his melodies when he'd have those guitar things that sound. I always get the feeling that he probably would tune those things and play it on acoustic guitar and come up with the parts.
Yeah.
So it sounded really full on the acoustic, and then you translate it to electric guitar, and it's like, oh, that sounds amazing.
That could be. You know, I'm not exactly sure. He wrote a lot of the guitar parts in Soundgarden. You know, a lot of that. And he told me a great story about Kim, where he said Kim really liked. Kim wasn't really, I don't think, into gear and like the stuff. This sounds very avant-garde, but he liked to. Chris told me he would lie on the floor and he would get a sound. Chris would get a sound and dial it in, and Chris would just hand Kim the guitar, and he would just lie there on the floor, and that's how he would cut stuff. And I love that. You know?
It's interesting.
You do your thing.
It's interesting you said avant-garde as a way of describing things. When I hear even on I was thinking about. Fell on Black Days in the chorus, the bass line is very weird. The first da 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 da. He uses an F natural and then he uses F sharp. Ben Shepherd does, and it's a really fascinating bass line. People don't realize how complicated that stuff is. It's how intricate the parts are. Avant-garde, those parts are. It's
very strange, cool bass playing.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of the sound of the band.
Yeah,
the Soundgarden is such a combination of Kim's avant-garde guitar playing, Ben's avant-garde bass playing, and then kind of Chris being a little bit more, putting his unique tunings and stuff, and then a little more straight up the middle rhythm guitar playing, and then Matt Cameron's an incredible drummer.
Yeah.
So it was that unique. There was a combination of you know, it's a chemistry that is so special, and you know, Chris really appreciated that. Like what he told me later on, this wasn't that long ago. I mean, it would have been 2015 or something that we had a conversation. And he said, you know, I've really grown to like back in the day, maybe people's idiosyncrasies when they were younger, they're fighting on the road, or things people piss you off, and maybe when you're a younger musician, there might be the tendency of like what do I, you know what I mean? He was like, yeah, we might have been more upset. Like, I'm not saying like kick that guy out of the band or anything like that, but a little bit more like they're not. And then later on, what he told me in 2015 was he's like, I realized, at some point that it's so all worth it, like that you just putting up with everybody's like it's like something that you come into as an adult, like just the appreciation of people's quirks, not trying to change people, dealing with their idiosyncrasies and realizing that it's that special chemistry that made them a band. And that's why, they always said they did one tour where Matt Chamberlain, another great drummer, and kind of like that had the Seattle sort of lineage and thing going on there, so he made sense. But Matt Cameron had to go play with Pearl Jam.
Yep.
And so Matt Chamberlain stepped in and played drums on some touring with Soundgarden. But other than that,
I think Matt Chamberlain played with Pearl Jam.
He did
early on after Dave Cruzen left, before they got Dave Abruzzi.
I think that's.
I think that he was in a short period of time. He played drums with them.
So it made sense.
Yeah,
because he's part of the family. So then he was like the natural choice to play drums if Matt Cameron couldn't for a tour. So it really made sense. But other than that, there was a thing that they had that Soundgarden doesn't exist without the four of us. So yeah, it was and I loved that kind of it was a band.
Yeah.
Unit.
So I want to continue this. We're going to actually do some more videos together, Pete and I, this week, and really enjoyed having you here. And it's been great to meet you. And we're going to hang some more.
I was so blown away with your knowledge of all this, by the way, and it was a nice way to start this. It's the first video I've made here, so thanks for great. I mean, like really, really insightful questions and comments and all that.
Thanks.
Because at the end of the day, I'm just a huge fan too of the whole legacy of that music. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks so much.